Something that's interesting with Sister Wives to me, now that I'm rewatching it from the beginning, is how often they've centered Robyn's experience, even though of the 5 adults, Robyn has the least experience with polygamy. Now, she has more experience with polygamy than I do. Even when she first married Cody, she was raised in the church that believes in polygamy. So that's a huge influence. And her stepfather did have another wife, even if they didn't live close. They lived like 3 hours apart, but he did have another wife and other kids. But my point is that even if that's the case, she was not a polygamous wife until she married Cody. But from day one, she has always had more to say about polygamy than anyone else says. This is how polygamy is. This is what it's like to be a polygamous wife. And it's always been really curious to me because it's like, she was the least experienced polygamist. Cody had been in a polygamous relationship for well over a dozen years. I can't remember the exact number at this point. He had been married to Mary, 20 years. The very first season, they celebrated their 20-year anniversary. Janelle joined him about a year or so later, year or two. So he had been a polygamist for at least 18 years. So a long time. Christine, I think, had joined them 16 years. So they all had well over a decade, maybe even 2 decades of polygamous lifestyle, but yet Robyn was always the first one there to talk about it. So I just started season 2, and they were talking about how hard it was to hide. And she goes, I've had to hide being a polygamist my whole life. And my first thought was, but she wasn't a polygamist. Even when she was a kid and her mom married her stepfather and he had a second family, they didn't live in the same area. They could live out as a monogamous family wherever he was, because his family in Vegas was like 3 hours away and they were in St. George, if I have the states correctly. As opposed to, the example was when all of their kids went to the same school, they would clearly have other kids with the same last name and the same father in the same grade. And there was no way to get around it when you had 3 kids who were all within 6 months and were not twins and had different moms. It was really clear. But it was funny to me because she's like, I've had to hide it my whole life. And even with all of the stuff that I mentioned, I just kept thinking, why is she the one talking about this so much when she's only been in this family a few months, and that's the only time in her life she's lived as a polygamous woman? So anyway, just a random observation.